Gorgeous film. Now, I'd like you to please join me in welcoming to the stage the president of Otis College of Art and Design, Bruce Ferguson. He will be moderating a discussion with the co-director, Shojan Azari, and director, Shirin Neshat.
Obviously, we didn't rehearse this. Can you hear us all? Good. Welcome to both of you. It's an enormous pleasure to have you with us and in LA with the film. I remember when you started the film, and it's wonderful to see it finished and to show it in a town where you would never say, we can't please everybody. So I was thinking, I'm going to ask a few questions of these two talented artists, and then we'll open it up to the general public. But I was thinking the first thing is that it's an incredibly complex narrative. It's very beautiful and it's extraordinarily well shot. But the narrative is, you as an artist making, as a female artist making a film about a female filmmaker who's making a film about another artist. And so that's already a kind of hugely braided narrative. And then on top of that, the subject is played by three different people. And then, of course, there's the turn in the narrative. But it also seems to me that there's a couple of other narratives. One is the music, which it seems to me is extraordinary, that the music does everything that, when you talk about Oum Kulthum, did, in a sense, which carries the emotions. I can see why you're now doing opera. It's kind of, there's this emotional carrying. And then the other thing is color, because you're known for doing black and white and a really kind of judicious use of black and white. And so the color is a kind of another narrative, almost a theme that goes through and changes the tone and the character of the film. So not to put you on the spot, but would you mind talking about that, just the complicated idea of those narratives?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for spending your afternoon here watching this film. I know it's quite a demanding film. I wanted to tell the truth that we started this project as a form of a biopic about Oum Kulthum with Shoja and other friends. We started to travel to Cairo, and we really believed that that's what we were doing, is make kind of a biography. But after 2-3 years of writing scripts, and we met in Cairo, and we found, I really think, I personally came to the decision that it was impossible to go under the skin of Oum Kulthum, and as non-Arabs, to make a truly authentic film about an Arab icon. And that we discussed this, and we consulted with people like Jean-Claude Carrier, one of the 4 most important scriptwriters, and he said, bring this story to something more contemporary and more relevant to your personal experience. And I remember Shoja at the time said to me, take the script and think to yourself, what is your personal obsession with Oum Kulthum? What is it fascinates you about her? Is it that she is the most important artist of the 20th century? Is it something that you want to prove to the Western world, that we in the East had such an important artist that happened to be a woman who, when she died, 4 million people went to her funeral? Or is it something that is a bit of a mirror of like looking into something that you wish to be as a female artist from the Middle East, battling with a career and having a child, and the expectation of women as it is in traditional societies? And so I took the script and basically turned it into my struggles, and first of all making this film, but also really put myself and my own questions as a woman artist, is how do we really battle with having a complete devotion to a career, but yet having the desire to have normal life, domestic and romantic and childbearing life, and what do you have to sacrifice when you can balance? Because Oum Kulthum, as you know, she didn't have a traditional life. She didn't have children. She was known to be gay. It didn't matter. It was her personal life was never an issue. She was 100% devoted. So that became the premise for this script, and then God knows we went on to develop that further. And so the narrative, it's not really perfect because it's trying to do so many things. There's so many layers of the Iranian director's story, of Oum Kulthum's story, the historical interest that we had on the political history of Egypt in terms of its modern history of King Farouk and Nasser, and then the archival footage and the dreams and imaginations. So it's a kind of a melting pot of different realities, different stories, different portraits, all kind of converging together in some unusual way of storytelling. And color, for me, I don't like color, but and I want to say hi, Ken and Rebecca in the audience too. The truth is that you cannot make a black and white film about Oum Kulthum. Oum Kulthum is all about, it's like the technicolor period in Egypt, fantastic posters that you saw, and the dresses that she wore. It really had to be, at least we had to pay great attention to the quality of music, and we really went in depth with that to make sure that we recorded the music in the best way we could in Cairo with the orchestra of some of the members of Oum Kulthum's previous orchestra and the singer who's still living in Cairo. So we paid acute attention to music and costume and color because I thought that we have to show her in her absolute glamour and grandeur. And it's not about me, it's about Oum Kulthum.
Georgia, I know you made a major contribution to this film, and I know your artwork in and of itself, and I just wonder what kinds of contributions you make when you're working together. Who says what about what? I mean, this kind of description of the way in which the filmmaker has discussions with, other people that are on the set, with the producer and so on. Is that, in a sense, echo your role in making the film?
Well, we work very closely from inception to the last touch together. But there is definitely a clear understanding from the very early on that basically she has the right to veto. So
just like Oum Kulthum.
So it's basically I put up a good fight as much as I could. But at some point she says, no, that's what I want. I say, okay, you're making a mistake, but that's good. We'll do. So that's usually the way we collaborate, really. But it's also, I think that it's very difficult because we're also in a relationship. So that was really the solution to not break the relationship. But in general, I think that we are sort of really different, like yin and yang, personality-wise, and also the way we look at the world. So it is really interesting, that dialogue, the dialogue that ensues as a result of this conversation. A lot of things, it's almost dialectical, So it's a back and forth, and out of that conversation, usually a synthesis, something more interesting than the initial idea emerges.
In some ways, there's a whole, and you just spoke about it very eloquently, but a whole level of doubt about what it is to be an artist, doubt about, when you're successful, when you're not successful, and so on. And that kind of existential doubt that is in the film is not what I associate with your work before. And so, do you think that is because of the, the searching for her, the understanding of her as that doubt came out, or was this a doubt that's starting to come out, or that is part of your sort of maturity as well?
I want to say that very often throughout the 6 years that we tried to make this film, I felt like I was failing in every way, both in terms of making the right story, getting on the practical level, getting producers, money, and also you know, just the script itself was really a tremendous challenge. Then I understood why nobody ever tried to make a film about Oum Kulthum. And this whole question of artists always expecting to make masterpieces and flawless work. And I think part of me intuitively wanted to show with this film the fact that artists fail, or artists make work that is flawed, and they have doubts, and they might have a vision like this woman did, just like me at the beginning, that she thought she was making this grand biography, and then she understood that it was really going the wrong direction, and even when she changed it, it failed. And I really wanted to be not just humble, but I think even in this film, when I watch it, I see a lot of flaws, and a part of me wants to go under the seat, and part of me feels really proud, and I think there's not enough conversation about leaving the artist making work that are flawed, or feeling like they could fail, and that this pressure that everything, once you make a good work, that everything you make has to be perfect. And I think with Oum Kulthum, going back to her, is that I think this is why she was so hardcore, you know, dominant and controlling her career, because she wanted her legacy to be left as an icon, and she never failed. And unlike any other iconic Western female singers who either committed suicide, you know, from Amy Winehouse to Whitney Houston to Edith Piaf, Billie Holiday, or became, you know, suicidal or abused by men, she succeeded and, you know, escalated in her career until she died. In fact, 4 million people came to her funeral. So I think she was a model of a woman that she would not allow failure. And she was known to be very dominant with her orchestra, with the people she worked with. And I just, meanwhile, she moved millions of people to tears. And this contradiction in a way that she created almost an orgasmic experience for her audience, but yet she never ever, and through all of her studies, never revealed anything about her own emotions. It told me that maybe that's what it took to be successful, to never show weakness, to never show fragility, something I do all the time, like by what I'm doing right now. And what the film says at the end, like, you just can't make everyone happy. So I really, truly wanted to make a film, which I don't think it resonates with everyone, because people could just walk out and say, I hate this film. But the point is to really make the message of the film about, at least for the woman, we know, and maybe for her, she felt like she had to compete with the men. I think part of what I like about being an artist is being a woman, and the fragility, and the idea that I show a lot of emotions and I expect an emotional reaction from the audience. But with Oum Kulthum, it was just like a one-way, you know, relationship. She was the god of people. Like, she just brought up people and down, and she took a lot of pleasure. So her fans, her audience, were 100% of her existence. If I'm not, maybe there are some Arabs in the audience. And that's why she's so sacred, because she gave 100%, and I don't give 100%. And I think I think we don't, because we want to have a life, we want to have children, we want to have certain, I'm a hard worker. But anyway, that's something I think is an important part of the message of the film that I'm not sure if people really get.
One of the other things I thought about, and then we'll open it to the audience, was listening to the cacophony of Cairo, which of course actually stirs my nostalgic soul, but at the same time, that her voice, the purity of her voice, is against the kind of cacophony of that environment, and it comes back and through. And the music, particularly using the oud and other instruments that we're not used to in the Western world, and then mixing those with Western music, that somehow pulled forward an emotion and a content just in and of and by itself somehow. And you wonder if the reason she could be the voice of a nation to two people as different as King Farouk and Nasser were has to do somehow with that almost transcendent sense of that voice in that noise, and that noise of that environment. Is that too far-fetched?
I don't think so. I think that actually the emotionality and what she could achieve is because of that anarchy, that chaos, you know. I mean, I'm not Egyptian, I'm Iranian, but we share that kind of chaotic life, you know, that is not orderly. And it's also interior chaos as well. And I think that she really reaches for that interior chaos, which translates into longing, you know. It is that you know that your life is breaking apart, and she kind of touches on that, and almost all of her, what she did was, it was her voice, of course, but it was the delivery of the language, and just like in Iran, the Egyptians also like the words, and poetry is very fundamental to their culture. And what she did was to play with these words over and over, delay them, as if in the process of lovemaking almost, and until she would achieve that effect of the language on people, and then she would release it. So there's really like the structure, I think, is pretty much it's based on longing. And it's the same thing in Iranian classical music. It's all about love of longing for your lover, for your nation, your God. And then she played all of that. So, and you don't know there's ambiguity about that.
I thought that one moment in the film that you go to for just a second, but is true, of course, is that when she was on the radio, the taxi cabs would just go over to the curb and stop, and everybody would smoke a cigarette and listen to her for half an hour on Thursday afternoons, and then the world would start again, and she had that power in that environment. So.
Well, it's like, her concerts were like 3-4 hours,
I think we'll open to other people. There's going to be a second showing of this later, so we don't want to wear our guests out too soon. Are there questions people would like to ask? There's somebody with a microphone.
Thank you so much for showing us, even if you feel like it wasn't ready. I think to us it was perfect, but I appreciate that you showed that you had questions about the piece, even now. It's beautiful. I always love that you guys interweave narrative and like impeccable cinematography. Like just that combination it brings me to tears all the time. My question is about class, and I felt like that about Oum Kulthum's upbringing and her humble beginnings, and I was wondering if you intentionally brought those questions forward in this piece, or if you had, just if you could comment on class and her upbringing.
It's a very excellent question because, of course, we couldn't follow her entire life because this was no longer a biography, but we knew the parts that we wanted to focus on is the 3 different important periods in her life. When she was born in a village, and it's really a peasant, in a very poor household, and the father and the brother were religious singers, and they had to dress her like a boy to take her to religious ceremonies to make some money. And no one knew that she was a girl, And that was why, at least even in the beginning, in the dream sequence, I had to show that. Then later, when she came to Cairo, when she was discovered, she was embraced by the elite, the very Europeanized, Cairns, and also loved by the royal family, and so she was very much part of the court, the monarchy of the King Farouk. So we had a concert that she delivered for King Farouk that became very. But then in the 60s, when they had the social revolution in 1952, when Nasser came, they took her music actually off the air. But then he reinstated it, saying she is the third pyramid of Egypt, of course, the fourth, I'm sorry. And so he reinstated and they became friends. From then on, she became, in her older age, very loyal to him and his revolutionary mandate for the country. And then she became very patriotic. And in fact, when there was a war in 1967 with Israel and they were defeated, she helped raising money for the country by giving concerts. So what I'm saying is the later part of her life was the moment where her songs even become more nationalistic and patriotic, where the younger years of her life was more sort of impacted by her exposure to the Western culture, to the European influence of the British colonialism in Cairo. And her earliest year was poverty. So we really try to focus on those, and particularly having a concert in the same place, first for King Farouk and later for Nasser, was a kind of in our part, and that's the curtain that now she's serving this leader and man of power, and now this one. And many people criticize her for being so loyal to so many political leaders. But what I wanted to say is, talking about class, what I love about Oum Kulthum is, like most Arabs know, she was loved by men, women, rich, poor, secular or non-secular, Shia, Sunni, Jews, Christians. There's only one thing that we completely agree on in the Middle East, and it's Oum Kulthum. And this is really unbelievable. Even people in Israel love her, and you can meet even Taliban and ISIS. They listen to her music. And so to me, aside from incredible power as a musician, she really was a symbol of solidarity and unity across the Middle East, even in Iran. So,
but in the construction of the film, the character of Latif is to actually set that class struggle and the context of the political context, in Egypt. So it's
when he criticizes her.
Well, yeah, that's because what is really interesting. There are many layers of meaning in this film. The narrative, and perhaps because of that, it became really complex. But one of the things that we realized was Oum Kulthum's relationship to the structure of power. That she used power and power used her, So it was very like from King Farouk to Nasser, when after the revolution they basically took her off the air. Nasser understood that what her significance is, and of course, I'm sure that he loved her, but also. He used her, he knew what political impact it had. And that's why Latif, is tells her that you have lost, who are you singing to? You come from a village and you sing for people, and now you're singing for the monarchy, for the king, So there are all this, there are these kind of nuances within the film as well.
I think there's a microphone.
Please wait for the mic.
The mic is
coming.
First of all, I want to congratulate you very much. It is really heartwarming to see Iranians do present other cultures. I wish we could do that for our own Persians, women in Iran that are silenced because of their music and because of their just being artists. So I noticed that you used a lot of non-verbal communication, a lot of silence, eyes, and all that. Was that meant to be a new way of communicating her life and everybody else's life at that time?
Well, you know, if you know my past work, I'm not very good with words, and I'm coming from photography and from video art, where there is no language, and I feel that human expression and it's very telling, and you don't always need to attach words to it, and for that reason, I'm for a long time doing human portraits as photography. And I just feel like it's so telling, you know, if you can tap into the soul of that person in the photographs with the subtle eye gaze or hand posture. So I'm really interested in and using as minimal as possible words in anything I do. In fact, dialogues are, I have biggest problem, but you can't really make a feature film these days all silent. That could have theatrical release, but if it was up to me, I would have made it that way.
Well, you have made a couple like that. Other questions?
Hi, thank you to both for the film. My question is about sacrifice. Throughout the film, all of the characters have given and sacrificed quite a bit for their artistic practices and their personal lives. If you could speak a little bit about the role of sacrifice in your own careers, artistic careers, and how it has shaped how you are today as artists.
It's a really good question, because I have to say, we often talk to the other artists, and I realize that, you know, in order to really give it everything to what you do, you have to work around the clock, and there is no separation between your personal life and artistic life. And often artists ask me for advice. I say, just don't let it be a hobby, and let it take over you in the way that you cannot control it, and you know, it's just, you become a servant to your ideas and your work. And in my life, art became, in other words, if it wasn't for my life circumstances, I would have never been an artist. My circumstance as a person in exile and separated from the family, and slowly it became a very healing process in terms of finding my own kind of family outside of family that I no longer had. And so if I lose everything, including citizenship or money or friends, the only thing I had was my art. And it became more difficult when I had a child, and then I used to bring him here and there, and I separated from the father, but I had the child, and then it became the question of what happens now, because the kid really needs your care 100% as well. And that became a real problem, because we started to make films in Morocco, and I remember I really suffered being very conflicted between my duty as a mother, having to be in New York with him as a single mother, and shooting a film. And so in this film, of course, I never had it as bad as Mitra, but I really tried to bring into that experience of being a mother and being really a career person, where my colleagues were men. They basically leave the children with the wife, and basically they don't have to deal with that. So I think with Mitra, the decision that she had to make and the sacrifice that she had made to make the film and leave the son behind, it was like looking at Oum Kulthum and say, well, she did it and I would do it. You have to sacrifice even your own child. And then obviously she found that, no, it wasn't so easy. So it's really my experience being brought into this picture. It never was a very resolved situation.
think somebody will bring you a mic.
It's coming.
Shirin Khanum, this was a beautiful and very complex film. You have been in your life a champion of protecting the right of underdog. Is that true that I felt at the end you were so upset with so much success of Oum Kulthum, you wanted to break it into pieces?
You know, the thing is that it's again this film is quite autobiographical. I mean, that Mitra character is very much because we try to find flaws in Oum Kulthum and things that she did wrong, things that went wrong with her life and her career, and there's absolutely nothing. And I just was killing myself making this film, and every script that I was making was being badly criticized, saying, that's not the right way, this is not the right, what are you doing anyway as an Iranian making this film? I just felt like so flustered, like should I just give up? This is really, and really truly I did think about that. Now I know why people don't make a film about her. But it really was in that moment where we wanted for Mitra to have a point of a realization, was that, okay, this was what a woman I had idealized, that nothing she did, that in order to be an artist, to be a great artist, you have to be like this. But now I've become very human. I understand that, as a woman, I've suffered, and I'm learning that, suffering is a part of being a human. And I want her to suffer, and I want her to show that she has suffered. So she made her lose her voice. And then people, of course, she failed even at doing that, So it's like she was projecting into Oum Kulthum her own failure. But of course, this was just pure fiction.
But she did sacrifice a lot, don't you think?
It's a really good question. We met with her family, her adopted son, all the people who lived with her until she died, and there's a claim that she married for convenience, not because for love, that she actually loved the woman, or that her adopted son was devastated by the way that he was sent back home after she died because the husband just sent him back, and that, so a lot of things that she did just to stay in successful, and not, she never had a satisfaction on the personal level. And the other thing I wanted to say, that I was told by her family that when she was depressed, she would just simply go in the basement of her house, and she would stay there for days. She would never come out. She never wanted people to see her suffer or be in pain, but she was always alone, and sometimes she wouldn't come out for really a long time. So I know she suffered, but it was just, she never showed it.
But I think that the end scene, when the fictional or magical Oum Kulthum appears and they have that conversation, I think it's really, at least our intention to some extent, was reflecting on the process of art itself. So it's like almost you depart from the narrative itself, and the question, she asks her, why did you make me lose my voice, at the highest point of my career? And she tells her that because I was so put off by your greatness, so I wanted to break you down. And she ends up telling her that that's really arrogant. So is it the relationship of the art to the audience, because that is the question that is made here. What is that really, that relationship? Could you be so selfish not to regard the audience? Or would the audience devour you? Or, so it's just to leave it on that note, I think.
Please wait for the mic. The
arrogance. The arrogance, the last one. The last scene, I always saw that they come together just like the beginning. I always felt like when Mitra fails, the only person who comes to give her a pat on the back is the actual Oum Kulthum. And when she says, you know, I like your fire, your passion, everything that you're doing wrong is part of being an artist. And I think only an artist can talk to another artist like that and say, you know, even your weakness is a part of your artistry. And I like that because that's what it takes. That's what you have to suffer. And your pain, it's okay. And I really felt that was it was a must. And I love the idea that they speak in different languages, but they understand each other. So I knew that should be the ending like that. I always saw it like that. No, there is one question right here. Oh, sorry.
My mic doesn't work. We have no more questions. We're out of time.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that, but please give a big thank you to
Thank you so much.
and Shirin.